Hello everybody, and in this video we're going to be talking about arrays, and we're going to be implementing them in C++. So what's an array? Array is a collection of data which are of the same type. So if you're having an array which is going to store numbers, then each and every element of an array, of that array, is going to be a number, and whenever it is changed to any other data type, it's going to bring an error. So that's the general definition of an array. So how do we declare arrays in C++? The first thing is that you have to say is specify the data type of that particular array. So the data type is any valid C++ data type. It can be integer, it can be string, it can be char, it can be float, it can be double, and any other data type in C++ that is valid. And then you have to specify the array name. So the array name obeys any other variable name characteristic. It has to begin with an letter or an underscore, and it cannot start with a number since numbers are constants. And then you have to specify the array size, which means it's going to be the number of elements that that particular array is going to be holding. So in this perspective, let's try to visualize an array as a block. Let's take it as block 1, where there are people who are living there. And then think of an array as that whole block. Array has got sections, and each section, let's consider it as a single room in that particular block. So since arrays hold only data of the same type, we are going to restrict our explanation of the block such that only people are allowed to be inside a room. So forget about the chairs and the cabinets and anything else that is in the room, and only people are the only thing that can be in a single room. So the whole block, let's say block 1 is an array, and we are going to call it block 1. This time we are going to call it as integer of integer type. So in order to create an array of integer type, you're going to write int block 1, which means I'm trying to visualize the block 1 model, and then it's going to hold only 5 elements, which means in case this were a reality, then the whole of the block 1 will be holding only 5 rooms, and in each room any number of people can be present in there. So that's the way we can visualize arrays in real life. So the general way of how array works is that declaring an array integer of integer type, you just type in the int, which is the valid data type of integer type in C++, and then the array name, which is block 1, and then the number of elements or the array size that are going to be in that particular array. So say integer block 1 and then 5. So this block 1, the block 1 that you see there, is going to be having only 5 elements. Now there is a tricky thing that happens here. There are 3 things that you have to understand that are considered in an array. We have the position of the element, we have the element itself, and we have the index. So the index is like a way of accessing the array element, the exact how the computer intercepts it as the location of the element in that particular array. I may have been confusing at that point, but you're going to understand me. Think of it, since you're talking as block 1, let's say I'm in block 1, then 1A 14 S14, which means I'm in the second floor and in the 14th room. So that's the index if you're going to visualize it in the C++ way. So instead of saying 1A then 4S or something like that, I'm just going to be saying index 0. So that's the way of accessing the element that is in an array at the position. The first element, the first position, has the index of 0. That's something that you should not forget. And then the index, since we are declaring an array of 5 elements, which means the last index is going to be 5 minus 1. Since we started with 0 as the first index, then the last index is going to be 4. So when we start from 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 4, 4 is going to be our last index. But the position is going to start from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the position, the element at position 1, index 0 is 10, and the element at position 5, which means it's index 0, the element is 0. So let's try to assign and see the general format of assigning values to an array. So initially, this array here has nothing, has no data at all. We've just declared it. It has no any data. So we come here to the format, which means when we are assigning the values to an array, we just write the array name and then the index where we want to fit in our value. And don't forget, the index should never be greater or equal to the size of the element. So at this point, the index can never be 5 or can never be greater than 5. Any number greater than 5 is not going to be there. So then we're going to write in the value that we are trying to assign to that particular array. Let's say in block 1, in our visualization example, room 1, I'm going to keep there 45 people. So block 1, room 1, then 45 people. So at this particular point, this block is going to be having 45 people. And then I can do all this over and over again, and with any other value, as long as it's an integer, since our array is of integer type. So in room 2, I'm going to keep 23 people. In room 3, I'm going to keep 56 people, etc., etc. And in the last room, I'm not going to keep any person there. But don't forget, the position is 5, the 5th room, but when we are accessing it, which means the index is going to be 5 minus 1, and it's going to be index 4. That's very important to understand and memorize, since there are a couple of errors that may occur when you do not do that. And then let's say I want to obtain this value. So we have filled the array, and then I want to obtain this value and use it maybe for calculation. I'm just going to create any other variable that is not part of the array, and then I'm going to use the equal sign or the assignment operator, and then I'm going to write the array name and the index or of the array that of the array position that I want to access. Let's say I want to access position 4. So this integer c is going to have the array value of block 1 at index 4, and the value of index 4 is 0. So the value of c, when we try to write the C++ program that is going to display the value of c, it's going to be 0. So you have to understand that very well. If I try by any means to write here 5, that's going to be an error, since the index are from 0 up to 4 in this particular example. So keep that in mind. So let's go and try to code the actual thing, and I'm not going to write the code, I'm just going to explain it very quickly. And it's arrays, a C++ program that uses a while loop to allow users to enter 20 numbers and display them. So we're going to understand all the concepts that we've learned here: array declaration, array assignment of array values, and accessing array values. So the first thing, I'm going to create a block 1, and in this particular code, block 1 is going to having 20 rooms, and in these 20 rooms I can assign any number of people I want. So I'm going to create this variable int I, which is just going to be as my index. I'm going to use it for indexing purposes. See out this statement just to make the program look neat and tidy, but it's not very necessary. And then I'm entering the while loop. So as long as I, which is 0 currently, is less than 20, then I'm going to do the following. It's going to print out enter number at index, and then it's going to concatenate or add to the end of this point index I. So we're going to enter an element at index I, and at this particular point, when I is still 0, so it's going to say enter number at index 0, and then it's going to allow the user to enter a number. So it's going to be C in block 1. So as we've seen here how to assign values to an array, we said like block 1 equals to 45. So this time we've just, since we are obtaining data from the C in, it's going to be block 1 I, just straightforward as that. and then don't forget to add this increment value so that each time the loop does its thing, it's going to increment the value of I by 1. So this particular statement is equal to writing I equals to I plus 1. So they have no any difference, but I prefer using this since it's much clearer and simple to use. And then after filling in the data in the block, all the 20 rooms are occupied with people, then I'm going to display them. So the first thing I'm going to do is just see out this word saying parsing array element. So parsing means printing out every element of a particular array. That's not very important, but I've just included it there. Then I'm going to set the increment value, the index that was initialized, that was declared here. Then I'm going to make it have a value of 0, and then I'm going to start again. As long as I, which is currently 0, is less than 20, then I'm going to print or display block I equals to the value of the particular element at that index I, and currently the index is 0, so it's going to display the value of block 1 at index 0. And then, as always, since we are supposed to exit the while loop at some point, I have to increment the value of I by 1. So for perhaps a demonstration can have a better explanation, and I've compiled and run my program, and then it says fill array elements, enter number at index 0. So index 0, let's assume it's the first room that I want to put people, and I'm going to say only 3 people are going to be in block 1, then in block 1 room 1, and then in the rest of the rooms I'm going to give just any random numbers. So I'm filling the numbers as that. Every room in block 1 is going to be occupied by a certain number of people of my own choice. And then after you've just entered the last element at index 19, which means the 20th room is already filled up, it's going to display passing array elements from block 1 at index 0, but the position is 1. So this is room 1. Room 1 has 3 people, and etc, etc. And block 1 at index 19, which means it's room 20, is going to be having 6 people. I may have gone very fast in this video, but if you have any questions, comment and feedback, don't forget to text me, and I'll be glad to hear from you.